thank you for joining us today. I hope everyone is having a good evening. Thank you for attending our program tonight, which is called Women Who Drive Publishing. My name is Irene Chan, and I am the program chair at the New York Book Forum. The New York Book Forum is a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to build bridges between the publishing world and the public, which includes booksellers, authors, like Traci over here, print providers, and book consumers. As part of our mission, we present a different program every third Wednesday of the month, almost every month throughout the year. Members and attendees like yourself contribute to our efforts by generating interest, providing feedback on our programs and events, and helping us build connections with each other so that we can provide a variety of programs that speak to a diverse group of people. So whether you're a student, someone in publishing, or someone hoping to learn more about publishing or join publishing, we are happy that you are here. We're all here tonight because we are all in some way connected to books and to each other. So thank you for joining us. In March, we celebrated International Women's Day, and today's program is about women who drive the publishing industry. Women are decision makers and forward-thinking leaders and make up a majority of the publishing industry, accounting for 78% of the workforce in publishing. But that is not reflected in top-level positions, such as C-suite positions. And if you look around today, I actually think you'll find that is accurate. We have about 78, 80% women and 20% men here. So today we're here to talk about some of the reasons that contribute to why there aren't more women in top-level leadership. So thank you. Today we have with us Jody Mosley, Executive Publishing Director at Chronicle Books. We have Traci. Yes, round of applause for Jody. We have Traci and Todd. Is it still on? Yes. Acclaimed award-winning author of Nina, A Story of Nina Simone, Holding Her Own, The Exceptional Life of Jackie Ormes, and Make a Pretty Sound, A Story of Ella Jenkins. Round of applause for Traci. And we have Lauren Wine, Vice President and Editorial Director of Avid Reader Press and imprint of Simon & Schuster. Okay, let me sit. And I'm the moderator for this program in case that wasn't obvious. Okay, so let's start. Let's start by, can you each tell us about your start in publishing? Let's start from closest to me. Lauren, tell us about your start. Oh, sorry.
Yes. Oh, now it's on. Okay.
There we go.
So my start, I was an English major in college, and I had no idea what I wanted to do, as many English majors do not have any idea what they want to do. But I applied. I mean, I got an internship basically working for a literary agent this summer of my sophomore year of college, and I got the bug. Like I was 19 years old or 20 years old, and I just really, really loved being in this world. I also, at the end of my summer, the agent I worked for said, "So, do you want to be a literary agent?" And I said, "No, definitely not." She said, "Okay." I think I might be insulted. I said, "No, I just can't. I don't have your personality. I don't want to be like, I don't know, negotiating and talking about all the time. I just want to like be making books." And she's like, "Oh, okay, you're so boring. But I will help you get it when you graduate from college. Call me and I'll put you in touch with people or whatever." And when I graduated college, I did that. I called and I said, I really want to, she helped me. She basically just told me jobs that were available that she knew of. And I wound up taking a job as the subsidiary rights assistant at Grove Atlantic, which is a small independent publisher. I had no idea what subsidiary rights was, and I that interview was funny because it was pre-internet, I think, and I really don't think I didn't know what it was, but I really wanted to just be in publishing, and it turned I was there for 15 years is the bottom line. I wound up staying, and because it was a small publisher, and I wound up doing more than, so I learned a lot about subsidiary rights. I wound up going to if anybody doesn't know, I'll just tell you quickly what subsidiary rights is. Basically, it was a small Grove was a small publisher, and they would, when they acquired a book, they would try and acquire world rights on a book, and I would help try and sell the rights to that book in other countries. As the assistant to the person who did that. So it was very interesting to learn about British publishing and, just publishing around the world, Chinese publishing, just like what different covers looked like in different places, what the value of certain books were in different countries. But the editor I worked for also, the rights person started publishing, like editing books too. So I became her editorial assistant. So it was just a lucky situation because it was a small place. People wore different hats. I wound up learning how to be an editor too. And over time, I gave up the subsidiary rights. I became an editor. I was there for a long time. Then I moved on to Houghton Mifflin Harcourt as an editor, and then I moved on to Avid Reader Press, which is part of Simon & Schuster as an editor. So that is I work on literary fiction and narrative nonfiction, memoir. And that's my trajectory, pretty much.
Thank you. Quite a trajectory. Traci, can you tell us about your start in publishing?
Yeah, so I went through a very non-conventional path. I think I always knew that I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know how to do it. I thought the way to do it was to be a journalist. So I went to Medill at Northwestern, and I hated journalism. So I transferred out and got, graduated. I found a job that allowed me. It was at a company called Jellyvision that's still around. They created a program to be used in libraries and schools called That's a Fact Jack. And it was a reading comprehension program. So I got this job where all day I was reading Charlotte's Web and A Swiftly Tilting Planet and writing questions about them, higher order thinking questions about them. From there, I worked for Oprah. Did I say I'm from Chicago? I'm from Chicago. And I worked on Oprah's book club. And from there, I finally went into publishing, and I was an editor in several educational publishers and library publishers, because that's what's in Chicago. And obviously at that time, I realized that being an editor was a job you could have. It's not something that I realized. And once I did realize it, I really paid attention to who made the books that I was drawn to when I went to the bookstore. And the answer was Chronicle. And so I applied to be an editor at Chronicle Books, and they moved me from Chicago to San Francisco. I stayed there for 3 years. And then I went to work for Viz Media, which is like the largest manga company in the US. I worked there for 10 years. I started an original comics imprint there. Mostly because I didn't want to edit manga. But I learned a lot. I edited Pokemon and Legends of Zelda and some other things, Dinosaur King. And then from there, I moved here to work actually, I worked remotely for quite some time while I looked for a job here. And I got a job at Abrams, where I headed up the I didn't start out. Did I start out? I don't know. Jody was my boss for a while. I headed up the board book program there, and also the licensed program. And then I left Abrams to be publishing director at Workman. I left Workman to regain my sanity. And I took off 6 months from publishing, about maybe 4.5, 5, somewhere in there, between 4 and 6 months. Tried one more time at a little publisher called Little Bee Books, where I was the publisher. And then just decided to leave publishing altogether and to pursue a writing career. And by that time, my book about Nina Simone had already come out. I had several others in the hopper, and now I am writing full-time mostly, although here and there I do some freelance editorial work, mostly for Macmillan for First Second.
Thank you. Jody, go ahead.
Okay. So I was also an English major, but I was a double major in business, so my mom would be happy. And then when I graduated, I didn't know what to do. So I went to work for a newspaper in Denver, which I'm not from Colorado, but I decided I wanted to snowboard more frequently than I did in Florida. So I went to Colorado and I worked for the newspaper because that's like publishing. No, it's not. And then I also worked in sales and in the newspaper because that's like writing, but it's also not. So I was there for a few years. I learned a lot. I learned how to be yelled at gracefully, or I thought, by people whose ads were wrong in the paper, and became a salesperson there, and then moved after a few years to New York to become a publishing person. So I worked for Barnes and Noble and politely hounded anyone I knew or kind of knew to have an informational interview. And that's how I got a job at Random House as a sales assistant. I was there in sales for a little while, and then I went to Macmillan for a little while, and then I went all the time in sales. And I like walked around New York City with a rolly suitcase selling to different stores at Macmillan. Then I went to Hachette, where I worked with educational wholesalers and museums across the country, and Scholastic. And then I went to, why can't I remember? Oh, Abrams. And I was there for a long time and kind of found my place for a good chunk of time, my career, where I was the director of special markets, and also kind of worked on different sales things as people moved around different positions, and had like my big like transitional moment where I was able to go from director of special markets to the associate publisher for the children's list, and was really lucky that the publisher at the time took the chance on me, having no editorial background, to be the associate publisher, working with Traci and a lot of other amazing editors, and really learned a lot. I always knew how to like sell a book, but everything that happened before that was like this magical thing. And I realized how hard it is to be an editor, and loved it, and was there for a long time, worked on all the children's books and the comic list, and calendars. And then kind of that all changed a lot. And then I ended up at Chronicle just about over a year ago, where I oversee all of the children's publishing. And Traci is one of our authors who just had a book come out in January. So great. I know.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your trajectories. Traci, you mentioned that when you were looking for a job in publishing, you looked at the books that you were drawn to, and you were like, "Oh, it's Chronicle." What were the things that were drawing you to those books?
That this would have been around 2003, 4, 5, somewhere in there. And at that time, Chronicle has always stood out in the marketplace, but there was kind of no one else doing what Chronicle was doing at the time. Beautifully, beautifully design-driven books for children, smart content. I tend not to be drawn to books that are overly sentimental, and these books were not. I really appreciated the care and the cleverness that was put into these books, or that these books seem to exemplify. Yeah, so more often than not, when I just grabbed something I was in Barnes and Noble, and I would grab something off the shelf, it would have Chronicle on the spine.
Oh, very nice. Hats off to Chronicle. Jody, hats off. So women make up 78 or 77%, I think it's 78, of the publishing industry, but are not represented as such. Women are 56% of managers in publishing, and across all industries too. And women hardly make up senior leadership positions. So the benefits of diverse management have been widely studied. And we know today that diverse leadership promotes more diverse content, it drives creativity, and it creates more equitable work environments. So there's a lot of growth that we still need to bridge here. A lot of things, there's still a big gap. But a lot of people, but mostly women, still leave corporate publishing. So what are some of the reasons that you hear from people who leave the industry?
I mean, you left.
But I mean,
So
I do want to hear from Traci about why you.
Well, I feel like people want to stay in publishing in the audience. I left because I left because I was a Black woman in publishing. So I left because I was Black in publishing, and I was unsupported and diminished in a lot of ways, and commodified in a lot of ways, especially in one of the last jobs that I left. And so publishing was really painful for me. And once I realized that once I really took stock of how badly I was treated, I looked back and realized that it had been happening the whole time, and that it took something awful to happen to me to recognize all the sort of small injustices that I had been experiencing. So, I was telling everybody on the panel here that when I think about some of these issues that are being raised for women, they are issues I usually think about through the lens of being Black. I think of myself as Black first, woman second. So, the things I have to contribute here may not quite align with the things that we want to talk about, but I know I'm not the only Black woman who left publishing.
So you talk about being commoditized. I mean, I think that's a common thing that happens. And I think when that happens, people don't necessarily, they don't think they're doing it intentionally. And of course, this is unintentional bias. Authors, creators, artists are often commoditized. And the way that I feel about it is you really have to stop and think, am I doing this because the automatic habit is to do that in this system? So I guess my question is, what are the processes that people could look at, whether it's editors or marketers, to identify, am I commodifying this artist, this writer?
I think that is a really interesting question. And I think it is also, it's kind of inherent in that we are commodifying our creators. I mean, that's just literally what we're doing. We're creating books. And so we are taking their art, their blood, their sweat, their tears, and we're printing it and we're making money. So it is kind of the other side of the coin of books, because they're literature, they're fine art, they're important, but it's a business. So it becomes that dichotomy of how do we treat our creators with respect, because they are toiling so hard, like they're putting their soul out. I mean, not every book, but a lot of books. So I think that's kind of the unspoken rule of publishing. And I think so we have to be respectful of that and not take their product and make it into like a widget. I guess I'm saying, like, so I think it is looking at the whole person. So as an editor, and we can talk about this separately, but like, do we acknowledge the work that they've been doing? And how that may mean they haven't been going to their kids' soccer games because they've been doing 2 jobs. Do we give them an extra time on their deadline? And do we treat them properly by when we're giving them good news or bad news? So it really is remembering there's a person behind the book. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's to me like I always try and remember.
Yeah, certainly.
I would just add that this sort of dichotomy between the person and that. I mean, I'm taking it in a little bit of a different direction, which I think is a natural direction to go in a little bit, like women in publishing and parenthood and whatever. Like, I think that when I know that when I, like, I've been on a maternity leave several times, and coming back is really, really, really hard. And you feel, you really feel like you're not doing a good enough job anywhere, blah, 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 blah. And I think that the rules of capitalism and the rules of, like, I don't know, family and parenthood and whatever are at odds with each other. And that can really, like, there have been times where, like, the company I worked for was like, it's like, oh, it's for sale, or, oh, there's going to be layoffs or whatever. And it's like, oh, I'm not doing my best work right now. If they're looking at me right now, it's not going to be great for me, but like, if they were looking at my work over time, I mean, that never happened to me, but it was a fear all the time, like all the time. You're like, don't look at me right now because I'm, but if you look at a person over the arc of their life or the arc of their career, I mean, I don't know. I think that it's the same thing goes for the authors. I mean, it's like you look at the whole, you would like to look at the whole person, not exactly the way the world works, but in an ideal world, you can take all of that into account. But yeah.
Just to clarify, when I said that I was commodified, I felt commodified, maybe tokenized would have been a better way to put it. The systems that were in place sought fit to promote me, but not promote me, to put me on the website, but with no authority, to not give me more money, not give me the money that I was worth. So that's really what I mean. And what I'm talking about is, I feel great as an author because I make my own rules and I am wild and free. But in publishing, in that system, in that structure, which I imagine is the same or some shade is the same for women, I found as a Black person that I was expected to uphold a standard that was unrealistic, to represent a group that I did not represent because we are individuals, to be the spokesperson, to be the face, especially on the website. And that's what I mean by commodification. And the way that we fix that is to talk about it, is to find people who can support us through this, is to find community, is to ask the uncomfortable questions and to say the uncomfortable things and to demand a foundational shift. Because we see what is currently happening with all of the DEI, a lot of the DEI initiatives that were put in place in response to 2020. And that's because those things were not woven into the fabric of the companies such that they could not be dismantled. So whatever solutions we come up with have to be foundational. Now, my solution is to burn it all down and to rebuild it. That is not realistic. We are not going to do that tomorrow, but something has to fundamentally change so that people of color, so that women, so that LGBTQIA plus members of that community are supported, not just worked into the system that never included them anyway in the first place. Why would we expect that to work?
Sorry to add to that. Everything, yes. But I also feel like it has to do with the societal view of the consumer being like a white man or a white child. So like that's the audience that we're defaulting to and catering to and building the structures for it. So I think that is kind of the breaking of the mold of who we are aiming our books at in some ways.
Yes. Well, tokenism is probably the better term to have used for that question. Tokenism of am I benefiting as a publisher? Am I benefiting from this person, or am I actually valuing this person? Am I taking value from this person being a token and representing things that they are not? Or am I actually upholding this person and others? Or am I creating a token system? You had mentioned that when you went on maternity, you felt like, don't look at me right now, I'm not doing my best work. And I mean, I personally, I feel like if I'm not working madly hard every single second, then, oh my God, I got to be working madly hard. Otherwise, someone's going to be like, this person isn't pulling their weight. And that is not I mean, it doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't make that feeling any different. And so speaking about maternity, that is one of, it's a privilege to not have to be able to proceed in your career without having to think, what am I going to do when I have children? How do I keep my career going? How do I structure my life around children so that I don't have a gap in my career and that I can still move forward later? And if you're not the person taking maternity, then you get the privilege of not having to worry about these things. And so a lot of women, I think, approach their employers with their plan. And if the script were flipped, how do you think employers should approach people, women who are going on maternity with the plan instead? Instead of women having to initiate this as individuals, what if companies did it?
Well, I had a meeting, like a review at some point recently with somebody I work for, and I was all like, and he was just like, so what do you need from me? And I was struck dumb. Like I had never had this conversation before. What do you mean? What do I need from you? And he's like, what do you need from me? Everything's going well. So like, what can I do to make things better for you? And it was so shocking. Like I think in 30 years, I just had never heard that. And I had no answer because I had never thought about how it took me a while to be like, oh, I can have needs, or I can, think about this and actually create, I don't know. I mean, I have colleagues now who are going to have a baby, and I'm thinking like, she can do what she wants. If she wants to come back, great. If she doesn't want to come back, great. But when, like, I know that she is, her life's going to change, but she's not fundamentally going to change. How are we going to make this work for her? How is it going to work on her terms? And I've been talking to people about how she should know that she has choices and she has options, and that it might look different, but she can do this. She's not, I definitely felt like I had something to prove coming back. Like, oh, I have to pretend I don't have a baby at home. I'm going to never talk about it. I'm never, it's a little bit of an old school thing. I don't know if people still are like that so much, but, you shouldn't have to apologize for all the different parts of your life. Like, we contain multitudes, and the work should be able to adjust to that.
I think what's interesting about a lot of like any kind of parental leave that happens is that most companies I've worked for, and I have 2 kids, full disclosure, but like, and this is before paternal leave was part of the law here.
I keep saying maternity leave, like parental leave was not a thing.
Like it didn't, like my husband,
yeah.
That's a whole other conversation. Like he couldn't if he even wanted to. So what the onus was on me as the person going on leave was to cover my job while I was gone. Most companies don't have anyone who's going to do your job. So you going on leave puts your colleagues, they have to do your job. So then you have to like buy them presents and like thank them and be indebted to them and like walk their dog or like it. So it's on you to do that. And if you are a person who doesn't have children and 5 of your when I was pregnant, 5 other people were pregnant or like soon thereafter. So then everyone who's not having children has to shoulder that weight. And it becomes like the people have to cover for each other. Now, maybe other companies don't do that, but it does become like a problem that the people have to solve. So that's part of it. And I had my second child. I decided to come back part-time for a while. And so while I was on leave, I like concocted this like chess thing, like I can do this and this person can do that and then this person can get promoted, and I had to like present this whole program to my boss at the time to be like, here's the idea, you don't want to keep me, right? And here's what we can do to like make things work and also not overtax the company by me taking a part-time job. But again, like no company I've ever worked with has ever even cared. I mean, the people care, but it's like the company, like that's always like, it's the company's a business. It's like this capitalistic monolith that wants to make the money, and people, all of the parts kind of having babies or, having lives is not really important. Or it seems.
Right. It's not supported. And no one really talks about that. Like, I feel that women aren't approached about this. And like you said, you had to make your own coverage plan for when you went on maternity. But as a company, why aren't companies thinking about this? Shouldn't companies be saying, oh, of course, if I have employees that are women, some of them will have children. Or if they have families, they will have families. Shouldn't there be a plan in place to think, how do we support this? Because it's going to happen. It's not like people aren't going to have children. And if you're not talking about it, doesn't mean it's not going to happen. People will always have families. I don't either. I have a
Have a
dog.
family.
I did not have children.
Yeah, I don't. No, I have a dog. I don't have children either, but other people will, and some people will have dogs. And I had my coworker watch my dog. Okay, let's talk about women who create content. Women dominate the creation of booked content. This has been happening since 1970, so it's not new that women create content and create great content and create a majority of content. There's been a significant jump in female authors landing spots in bestseller lists, but it really wasn't until 2000 that we saw a parody in the New York Times list. Not that the New York Times is the only metric, but it's the most popular. It's one of the most popular metrics of measuring popular authors. And so I think there seems to be a whole system behind bestseller lists. Traci has enlightened me to this before. There's a whole system behind bestseller lists which make it rife for bias, and it games the system. And as I understand it, a lot of this has to do with marketing. So what are some things that publishers can do, both large publishers and small publishers, to mitigate bias and make sure that their authors are getting fair treatment?
I don't know that question can be answered in this room. I mean, I think there needs to be some shifts. Even when we were talking about parental leave, the reason that the companies are not coming to you is because companies are trying to get away with whatever they can get away with. And until somebody asks and demands and unionizes, changes are not going to just happen. And I think that's the same for everything, for anything that we talk about today. But it needs to be, I mean, obviously, change starts with the people, starts at the bottom. We can't expect the CEOs to, we should demand that the CEOs and the people who are in charge make the change, but the change is always going to come from the people. And so, I don't know what kinds of supports can be put in place. There are people much smarter than I who do this for a living. But I do know that the one thing I think that is going to make a huge change is that if people band together, if nobody ever has to go alone to ask for a thing, if there is a community of support, a union would be even better. But, it can't be, no one should ever feel alone. And it has to be men too. It can't just be women asking for the things that they need. That did not answer your question, but
No, it does.
That's how I feel.
You could ask.
Well, I think
Together we should.
the marketing is a hard job, and I'm not a marketing person, so I just am happy we have marketing people. So, but I think they are in response to society. So I think part of it has to do with the consumer behavior and the fact that, I will say I counted. So the fiction lists are pretty predominantly women, and it goes back to the age-old idea, and also true, women read fiction, men don't read fiction, men read nonfiction. And same goes for children as well. Little, girls like to read this, boys don't like to read. So we have to get boys to read. And these are the conversations that happen all the time, whether individually it's true or not. And I think that nonfiction is primarily men because men are thought to be more serious, and they write serious books about serious things. And so I don't edit nonfiction. I don't on the adult side, so I can't really speak to that. So I don't know what those conversations are like, but I do know the conversations that are happening about children. And boys don't want to read about a female protagonist. Boys don't read fiction. Boys read nonfiction, and all of these things that continually happen, whether I don't know if they're true or not, and a consumer behavior, but that we are feeding the children what we think they need, and then they grow into adults who have been fed this all along. So it's going to what Traci's saying, we need to change the consumer behavior in some magical way, which.
Well, if you look at, I don't know the numbers. Oh, this is just flashing me. Um, I don't know the numbers, the comparison between Hunger Games and Harry Potter, but it seems to me that some boys read books with female protagonists, and I'm guessing some women read nonfiction. And in fact, in some of the content that I sent you about the obscure math of the New York, behind the New York Times, I think there was one article in the New York Times bestseller list. There was one article that said that the way for women to break on the list was to write nonfiction. I write nonfiction. I write nonfiction about Black women, and I hope that boys read it, but I don't care because I want to tell those stories. I think there are myths that we tell ourselves again and again and again, and maybe they are true. I mean, I have been told so many times that if you put, and even later in my career, not just at the beginning, that if you put a Black face on the cover, the book will not sell. To my face, as if people did not see me. We know that that's not true. So who knows? Who knows where these myths, where the kernel of truth for some of these myths comes from, and whether or not it still exists today.
But we know they're not true. That's the important part, I think. Actually, I read this interesting, about how boys don't read fiction. There was this article about this man who he had this automatic book generator generate what book he should read before bed, and then it recommended Babysitter's Club to him, which he never thought to read, but it was great. And then he wished he had read it sooner because he felt like it people in Babysitter's Club, the characters in there, they're resolving conflict in a healthy way. They're talking to each other, and he was like, "Oh, this is what I need to do. This is what I want to do for my children, so that I can mirror resolving conflict in a way that is healthy, like the girls do in Babysitter's Club." Great series if you haven't read it. So the idea for this program started when one of my colleagues asked the question, "Where are all the female CEOs in publishing?" And we looked at each other and we said, "We don't know. We don't know, but we should ask the question." So we've talked about why women leave the industry, and we've talked about bias. And I want to talk about the ceiling in publishing for women and the level of support that women receive to pursue CEO positions, if that's what they want, and or just the level of support that women receive in general, like mentorship. And what are some programs or initiatives that any of you have seen that help close this gender gap and make opportunities more accessible to women or marginalized communities? Or if you don't know of any, what initiatives would you like to see more of?
I have no idea how to get a woman into a I mean, there are some women CEOs, so to acknowledge that. Chronicle has one, and so did Abrams more recently. But I think there's lots of mentorship programs. I have done some with the Children's Book Council. We Need Diverse Books. Some within companies themselves that have mentorship programs, but I don't know how effective they are at promotions. Like, I don't know the results of the mentorship programs. So I don't know if someone's like, that worked out well for me or not. I really don't know that literature exists or any kind of research has gone into that. It's one of those things where I do know several women recently who have either left publishing entirely or tried to leave. And there becomes this kind of career cul-de-sac is what I call it in my head, where there's there's nowhere to go because the people who leave go elsewhere for a number of reasons, but above you, there's nowhere to go. There's like this magical force field. I don't know how to get beyond it.
Burn it down.
Burn it. We're going to burn it down today. That is what Jody said. She said, "Let's burn it down today." But we're not going to do that. If you could give yourself, let me check this out. If you could give yourself if you could give your young self one piece of advice when you were starting out in your career, if you can go back in time, what would you tell that person?
Burn it down.
Burn it down.
I'm sorry. my piece of advice and is basically like is to talk to everyone. It's one of those things like beyond your whoever department you're in, whoever you're working with, talk to the people in other departments. I was lucky for a lot of my career to be in smaller publishing houses. So I was able to talk to contracts and to talk to production people and talk to marketing people and the mailroom guy, like whoever, like have that kind of conversation because it really just makes you a better person and you understand what your workload affects other people. So that to me is like the most important thing is to talk to everyone that you can and be kind to everyone. Just because it's a good life lesson.
What would you tell yourself, Lauren?
Well, I agree that you should always reach out to people. And when writers ask me, oh, how do I get an agent? My general advice is read the acknowledgments of the books that you love or that you think your book is in conversation with. Read the acknowledgments, see who their agent is, and then reach out to that agent and explain to that agent why you're reaching out to them and say, dear so-and-so, I read this book that you represented. I loved it. Here's why I wrote a book. I think, and I think it's the same thing in publishing is sort of like, if you admire what somebody's doing, or if you hear of read an article somewhere about, reach out to that person. People really like to hear from you and say like, oh, I see the work you're doing and it's meaningful to me. Can we have a conversation about it? I think that reaching out to people about what they do is really great. And I would say also on the more internal, less networky side, I think a lot of people have imposter syndrome. And I think that can happen, that you can have that for many years, maybe forever. But there is that Miranda July book that's like, nobody belongs here more than you. Remind yourself that because really nobody does. Like you have a place where if you want to be somewhere, you should be there. Like, don't feel like I don't belong here, whatever. Make yourself like, maybe it's antithetical to what some of the things that you've said. Maybe that's not a fair thing to say, but don't cut yourself out of something because you feel, I don't know, you have imposter syndrome. Don't have imposter syndrome. Make choices on your own terms.
Absolutely. And if you feel like you don't belong somewhere, burn it down and rebuild it.
Oh, yeah. I would tell my younger self you are a writer because that's where I started and that's where I ended up. And if my younger self said, but I want to be in publishing, I would say, keep your eyes open, girl. Keep your eyes open. I have been incredibly fortunate to have amazing, amazing bosses. I mean, Jody was an incredible boss. My very first boss was a woman. The only time I had a male boss, he fired me. He was terrible. But I don't know. Just keep your eyes open and find your people. But if we're talking about little Traci, you're a writer, girl.
Yeah, you definitely are. Thank you all. We're going to open this up to questions and answers. So if you have questions, raise your hand. I will bring my mic over to you because we are sharing them, as you can see.
Okay, you don't need a mic.
Thanks, Roger.
A few things. First one's just like, as a McMillan employee, don't burn down my office. Secondarily, you talk a lot about, how women have had that struggle, which I completely agree with. As someone that has, thankfully, in my career, worked for amazing women, it's making me a better employee, a better man. My question is what is your perception of what the men are doing, gaining those seats? Females, not necessarily good, not necessarily, could be that they are, doesn't mean that they're not, that are getting them into the seats. Is it just an all boys club thing? Is it just legacy? Is it just something else? Like, what kind of skill sets are being attained by, let's say, I don't remember what their percentages were, like, who's in this, who's not gender.
I think it's like 10%.
So, like, obviously there's a huge gap, which needs to be. What kind of advice can you give to managerial, director level, females that can potentially get them to that level that others aren't necessarily?
I don't know if it's fair to put the onus on the women when the problem is the system. And I also think that, yeah, burn it down. But I'm just saying, but you know what I mean? I mean metaphorically. But I'm just saying.
As an Arab Christian man, I'm very much a minority on many levels.
Yes.
And nobody ever thought I'd end up in freaking publishing.
Yes.
With a BA in English. But at the end of the day, there are tangible things that are there that are enabling those men one way or the other.
What are they? What are they?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking you.
Okay, I'm for one to agree with Traci. Yeah. Well, it's also part of it is to one, not to put it on the women, and also I have definitely seen men promoted who were told, oh well, he does that, you who started after me, who were just dudes who got the job, and it had nothing to do with merit. And it's like the fact. And I mean, if I would like, has anyone else seen that happen? Like anyone?
Yeah.
Why were they promoted? What could I have done? And I did speak up. I'm not shy to say, why didn't I get that job? And we're told, well, so and so stayed later, or or you just had a baby, or oh, you wanted it. And so and in my reviews or in my moments, I would say, like, what can I do? How can I get promoted? And so why did I get a job? Maybe I'm annoying. I don't know. I mean, like, or I wasn't playing golf with the guy. I don't know. So there is definitely a thing that happens. So I can't answer it. And maybe you have the answer.
I think maybe
for it.
the interesting thing here is if we're talking about meritocracy and nobody can answer this, isn't that what the people that are making the decisions should be asking? What is the merit that I base this on? If nobody here can answer it, shouldn't they be answering it? Shouldn't they be saying, what are the skills that I hired this for? What's the merit that I'm basing this on? Because if we don't know, who is it that knows? The person that's hiring should know. That's Lauren, did you have?
I mean, this is some. I'm gonna just get into trouble. I have nothing to say. I can't answer this. Sorry.
I mean, I think the question also assumes that we want to be there, which we may well not. I mean, that's maybe not as the C-suite stands today. I don't believe, well, I'll just speak for myself personally. That is not something I ever aspired to. I never even wanted to be publisher, but it just seemed like where I should go. But I was never going to be CE anything. I mean, look at this. I don't have the temperaments. I I could make some changes, but I don't know that necessarily that has to be the goal all the time. And I think you know I think capitalism is hard, and I think I know that's the system we're in, but it doesn't mean it's good or right or fair. That's the other thing that I think the question assumes, that it's all fair. It's all, the playing field is completely level, and it's not. Which I think is another reason why we don't have answers.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Not everyone wants to pursue a C-suite position, but if you don't, then you don't constantly get you don't get rewarded as such.
Well, then you have to figure out what the definition of success is for you. What does it mean to be rewarded?
Yeah, yes, what does it mean to be rewarded? And systemically, you want to be rewarded if you're not constantly pursuing a C-suite position also. And I don't think we have a system that supports that. If you're not constantly looking to get promoted and manage and then eventually go into a C-suite position, you have, whoa, that was really loud. You plateaued.
I have like two things. I want to say something and then I'll follow up with a question. First of all, in 20 years of publishing, I've only worked for one man and mostly women. So I've had amazing women that have made huge investments in me. I'm grateful for that. But I mean, you guys have great positions in publishing now, so you've overcome a lot to get there. That's awesome too. But you said something about burning down the system. Doesn't that happen from the inside?
Yes.
So I worked for an organization where it was all men in the C-suite. They hired the first VP that was a woman. And now like over half of that company has executive leadership that are women.
Yes.
So they burned the system down from the inside because that woman stepped in and she led the division to the highest revenue years they've ever seen. The culture got better. So doesn't that happen from the inside out? I mean, I know it's a struggle to get there. And I agree that it's not all on the women to do this. And I agree that we should be fighting for the equality in publishing. But fighting and getting there, doesn't that allow you to burn the system down from the inside out?
Sure.
Well, just a note to answer for you, but it's exhausting sometimes. So you have to decide which fights you want to take on. And so, not to speak for you, but like
Yeah. Oh,
sometimes
were
you
you
might be like,
asking me
yeah,
that?
yeah,
Just in
yeah,
general,
or anyway, yeah,
you had said,
yeah.
you know, never wanted to get into the C-suite. You
Yeah.
never had the temperament for that. But
Yeah.
isn't that exactly where you bring the system down?
Oh, no, 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 no. I feel like I would have been used up by this. I feel like the system was already trying to use me up. Yeah, no, that wasn't. And as a Black woman, the intersectionality of
This is more than just being a female.
it's more than just being. It's also yes, and all kinds of things. It is exhausting, but also that's not where I want to be. That's not where my heart lies. I could have done that maybe if I had kept in publishing and stayed and stayed and stayed. For me, success is being able to make a living as a writer. That's all I need. I took a huge pay cut, huge. I don't make anywhere near the amount of money that I was making when I was publisher by doing what I love. And it's not easy. And I'm so grateful for all the people I have in my community who send me freelance work and who, do things so that I can live the way I want to live. I would never go back to corporate punishment. Publishing. There you go. There you go.
That's the headline. Paging Dr. Freud.
Let's talk about joy.
Yes.
What kind of things have you seen or that you have done with your female, non-binary, all your theys, thems, she's, hers, that was like celebration? What have you done to celebrate your employees, or what do you think would be good ways for us to go back to our teams and recognize the work that we're all doing?
Good question. That's a very good question. I mean, as a manager, I try to see I can't manage all of the people who I manage the same way. So there are a couple of things to that. I mean, there is the community of the department, and that is getting together and calling out people for doing good things and uplifting everyone, and wishing someone a happy anniversary or happy birthday or happy whatever. So that's part of it. But also when I'm having my one-on-ones with people, it is like gonna be a little intense. Like, are you okay? Are you good? Maybe you need to take like after pre-launch, like after launch. Why don't you like take a day off? Just like, and so it is that leeway for them to like breathe, to be a person besides being an employee. So that's that's my management style, is to reflect the person, but also like some people want to spend 20 minutes talking about White Lotus before we talk about anything work-wise, as one does. But like, and another people just want to talk about the work and they want to be out and they want to do what they want to do. And so I will meet them wherever they need to be. And so I don't know if that's joy, but that's how I try to work with my colleagues, whoever, whatever they are. And it is it really is, we work with children's books and that's fun. I mean, like, and it's always remembering who our end consumer is and acknowledging that books, particularly children's books, can literally change people's lives. And like, I believe that with every core of myself. And that's what I love and hope that everyone else around me feels the same way.
Yeah. I mean, we also just, I mean, I think just acknowledging people calling out what they do and what they contribute and doing it publicly whenever possible is something that we try and do. And same thing, White Lotus, great. If like if that's but also just being aware, trying to be aware without being invasive of what's going on in people's lives and making accommodations for them in whatever what people need. And also getting like cake and cookies and stuff like that. It can also, that can also be like a nice thing occasionally. Yeah. I have like a clothing swap in my office once in a while, which can be really fun. But yeah.
I try to not push people away, but if I see that someone's really interested in something, I try to introduce them to that thing, even if that means I might lose that person.
What do you mean by that?
Like if I have someone on my team and they're really great at marketing,
Yeah.
they're really interested in the marketing aspect of this, which is not what I do.
Yep.
And I'll say, maybe you should talk to so and so in market. Do you want to talk to this person in marketing? That might be
Yes.
something you're interested in. Because I think men are constantly presented with opportunities and when they express interest, and women aren't always presented of opportunities when they express interest. And this is also my own personal bias. I do come from a very misogynistic family. So no matter how much I expressed interest in something, I had to constantly ask in order to have, if I wanted music lessons, I had to beg. Like I had to make a case for it and explain why it was beneficial. And so I try to be mindful of this when people express an interest. I try to support that and approach them with it because maybe they're too shy to ask. So thank you. We're at time here. We have time for one more question if there is one.
What did you ever come up with an answer on what your manager could do for you?
Oh. Well, I got some great ideas. I'm just going to tell them to burn it down. No, that's what I'm. God, no, I'm still thinking about it. I can't it's very hard to think about that kind of thing, to articulate it.
I've never said that.
It was truly shocking. It remains shocking. And yet I have to say, like, I have said it to other people and nobody ever has an answer for me either. It's like, it just goes against what we are taught to think, I don't know. Yes, I know. I agree.
I could tell him to bring the cookies
Right,
and the parties.
Oh yeah.
I'm sick of planning parties.
Right, exactly.
But to get used to
Yes.
hearing
Right.
and then
And
also
having an
having
answer. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you everyone for coming to our program tonight. Thank you to our program participants. I'm so grateful I got to hear from you. I'm really glad you guys were able to come here. This has been a really great, I've had fun in this program. I hope you did too. So thank you for coming to our New York Book Forum event. Our next program is virtual on April 16 about sustainability. And then after that, we have a members only bingo night on April 30th. And if you're not a member of the New York Book Forum, I encourage you to become one because you get discounted at programs like this and you can come play bingo with us. Thank you everyone for coming.